Next issue? Yeah, sure.
You mentioned in India and Pakistan.
Yep.
I understand that India and Pakistan began a session process to join the Shanghai Cooperation Organization.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how the United States views that, especially, but also, I mean, to combine that question to follow up on the questions on Russia yesterday, where General Dunford referred to Russia as the biggest national security threat.
Mm-hmm.
Does the United States, the State Department, share that assessment again?
Well, first on the Shanghai Cooperation Agreement or group, I'd refer you to India and Pakistan for reaction to that or for the reasons why they've chosen to join that group. With respect to your question about General Dunford's remarks yesterday, I think John, when he was here yesterday, was very clear on this issue, that General Dunford is expected to provide his views, his assessment on which nations or entities pose a threat to the United States, and that's his job. We certainly, as John spelled out yesterday, recognize the challenges that Russia, primarily through its actions in Ukraine, poses to the region. And as John spelled out, we've taken many steps from reassurance with our NATO allies, reassurance measures rather, to pursuing a peaceful diplomatic solution in Ukraine via the Minsk commitments and implementation of them to address those challenges. But I would add that the Secretary doesn't agree with the assessment that Russia is an existential threat to the United States, nor China, quite frankly.
Why not? They basically went in and took Crimea, which had been part of Ukraine since 1954, just took it back, even though the U.S. doesn't recognize it.
Sure.
And it is continually stirring up trouble in the eastern part of Ukraine, so much so that the Baltic states have appealed to the U.S., and the U.S. has, responded by shoring up its commitment under Article 5 of NATO. So why shouldn't the U.S. regard Russia as an existential threat?
Existential threat. Well, let me finish first of all. And I included China as well. These are major powers with whom we engage and cooperate on a number of issues, despite any disagreements we may have with them. And those issues include, frankly, Iran and others, Syria, other issues around the world. I would just say what the Secretary does consider an existential threat is the rapid growth of extremist groups like ISIL, particularly in ungoverned spaces. But to return to your specific question, we've been very frank about our assessment of what Russia is doing in eastern Ukraine and the need to address the threat that it poses there. And that includes other borderline states, including the Baltics. And as I said, we've addressed that through our reassurance efforts with our fellow NATO allies, and we'll continue to do that. And we're also helping, obviously, Ukraine through a variety of assistance, as well as working, as I said, to help it and as well as Russia and the separatists implement the Minsk agreements. We need to find a peaceful diplomatic solution to Ukraine, and that's where our focus has been. But again, just to finish, we've been completely frank, I think, in calling out Russia for its involvement in eastern Ukraine in terms of troops, in terms of command and control, in terms of heavy equipment. Where I think I tried to specify the difference is the word existential. Certainly we have disagreements with Russia and its activities along or within the region, but we don't view it as an existential threat.
And this may be
Sure.
an academic question, but I'm a little confused here.
Yeah.
Is Russia not an existential threat because there are these international mechanisms through which the U.S. and other countries can show their displeasure through the UN Security Council, through NATO, through fill in the blank, whereas with ISIL being at most a proto-state, as General Allen has suggested to us, there is no regular way of engaging and trying to compel ISIL and similar groups from doing the damage that they've been doing. Is that the difference?
Well, we do talk to Russia as well as China. We do talk about the range of issues that we have with them and the areas of disagreement that we have with them. And so in that sense, yes, I mean, we do have dialogue with them. We raise issues. And again, we're very frank with Russia on where we disagree, including its actions in Ukraine. And yet we also, there are areas where we cooperate, such as preventing Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon. So, in that sense, yes, we do have dialogue with them.
What about the fact that, as General Dunford specified during his confirmation hearing, that Russia is a fundamental existential threat because it has a nuclear arsenal? By the same argument, why isn't India an existential threat? Why isn't Pakistan an existential threat? Why isn't France an existential threat? All three of these countries are nuclear powers.
Again, that was General Dunford's assessment, and we said we don't. That's his job to give that assessment and frank analysis, candid analysis of how he views the world and the security situation and the security threats, and he did that. I'm just pointing out that we don't necessarily disagree, or we don't necessarily agree with his assessment of Russia as an existential threat.
Have you heard from the Russians about General Dunford's characterization? What was your response, the U.S.'s response, to any concerns the Russians may have raised about this description?
That's a fair question. I'm not aware that we've had that they've raised those remarks with us in particular. I can check, but I don't have any.
If you could take the question, that would be
Sure,
helpful.
sure. See what I can find out. Yeah, in the back.